Right, so finally then, something that occurred to me after I was here last time talking to you, and it was a question that sort of popped in my head, and I thought, well, when you talk about wanting a party political system, it occurred to me that I've sort of understood what you meant by that when you said it, because you don't, in essence, what you're not looking for is like a left and a right type system. It's the scrutiny that you want. It's not you don't want left, and you don't sort of see it essential that there's a left and a right in sort of, if we look at the UK type system. In essence, what you're seeking is that you're aware that the current system in the Isle of Man is we know where the government is formed after the election. You're seeking enough weight in opposition to scrutinise that process.
Absolutely. What you have is this absurdity, and I've watched where I just look at disbelief at the way things are just nodded through. Things are not read because it doesn't pay you to read the stuff. You can lose your 30, your 40, your 50% enhancements as far as your executive pay. And what's worse for the newer members, they also lose it for their pension rights as well. So you end up with a situation where these people are put at a total disadvantage. Now, the difference with me, James, I've got no wives or kids. I've got no big mortgages. I can afford to do it the way that I want to do it. But if I had wife and kids, I couldn't afford the luxury of having what we've had to be inflicted with for the last 15 or 20, well, the last 25 years.
So, I mean, one thing that's been talked about quite a bit recently is this idea of a programme for government, and I know even Kate has sort of mentioned it on and off, and I thought, well, it is a very interesting idea that's been thrown around. How does it form? What
your problem is, you've got a complete democratic deficit at the moment. It's the debates. Tynwald is more like a playground as far as I can see. The problem is people don't understand that when you're opposing something, you're not doing it because you want to oppose it for the sake of it. No. You're doing it because somebody needs to ask whether this is reality. Somebody needs to shout foul sometimes. And when you see what has been allowed to happen, and basically what you've ended up with, we had Miles, he passed it on to Donny, then they got it off Donny and give it to Rich. Rich then lost it because of interference from the UK, not because of the good systems of government, as far as that's concerned. Then Donny got it back, then we had Toe, and now we've got Al. And the point is, you've had 25 years of this patronage system of government. There isn't a parliament at the moment. The speakers, I just wrote to the speaker, the way that the honourable member for South Douglas, Mrs. Beecroft, is talked at by the ministers when they reply on things that have no relevance to anything, and yet we seem to find that the situation is that the situation is that they are always given the last say, as far as they're never allowed to be made to stand up and explain the outrageous outbursts.
So obviously you're out from September. What do you think? I mean, I've got, obviously I have ideas, a lot of other people have got ideas. What do you see the next step in achieving that? How do you...
Well, I think unfortunately, and I hope it's wrong, that the chickens have to come home to roost, because you've got to remember that, maybe people are waking up. People need to realise there's hard work and sacrifice of people in generations before us that have developed things.
One of the things that occurred to me is that, obviously, I don't know if you're aware, the Manx Labour Party have announced 3 new candidates this week. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's not a million miles in policy terms between Manx Labour Party and Lib Van. There's not, it's not diametric. They're not the same, but there's not a million miles
between them.
Well,
look, the question you've got to ask, somebody said that they were all going to be Manx Labour Party, but all independents.
No, they as I understand it anyway, they're all Manx Labour Party candidates. They are the independent bit is that the Manx Labour Party is independent, but I mean this is. But anyway, no.
I mean the problem. What you've got to do is when the Labour Party, the Manx Labour Party, worked as a team under the leadership of Eddie Lowy, we had a chief minister that said we would never have redundancy pay as social legislation. That was part of the package for an organised group of people in order to get the social advancement of 80 years worth of employment law forward. But the problem you've got at the moment is you can't have everybody part of the pot, and that's the problem you've got at the moment. And we've got to try and make sure that we level it out for scrutiny. I loved being the minister and my private secretary, my diary was done and all that. You get your 50% increase on your pay.
Give me a quick history lesson. Why did you leave the Manx Labour Party?
I left the Manx Labour Party because the Manx Labour Party lost its way.
Right.
Now, I have to be honest with you, I would dearly love to see at least two parties on this island. Because you need that.
Do you think it's coming back then? Because, I mean, I don't know anything about the Manx Labour Party, really, but the little bits that I've seen and learnt over the last few months, it looks to me quite interesting at the moment.
Well,
that's not to say that Lib Van isn't interesting, but I suppose what I'm thinking of is that you've got these two political parties, as I say, they're not a million miles apart from each other. There's this idea of programme for government sort of floating around. Would it be good that if there was some sort of common ground between them in order to get that? Because in essence, what you're after is enough power to create that scrutiny. If there was some sort of alliance or agreement between them, they don't have to hold happy clappy and hold hands, but if there was some sort of discussion between them. But that's the problem you've got at the moment. You've got all these people who claim that they're independents in Tynwald, but they're not independents. They're paid up members of a one-party state by patronage. What you've got to do is bring about the good systems. There has to be the equal of arms. I mean, one member's secretariat for 32 members of Tynwald is crazy. Now, most of them don't need it because they don't bother on them sort of lines. But the fact that when you're dyslexic or you've got problems or you are like the unofficial ombudsman, you just are swamped with a lack of resources. If you're a minister, you've got a private secretary. If you're a minister, you've got a group of people who can write all your stuff out, can do all the stuff for you that are civil servants. You need to equal up that balance of arms. You've got to try and get a situation where people are paid on the same basis, whether they're in a department of government or they're on a scrutiny board of Tynwald. This absurdity that they can't meet half the time because they're conflicted on issues. We've got to have people in government and people out of government. I was the first one, even though I was the one that voted against ministerial government, that thought in the original first to 7 years that maybe I'd got it wrong. But I think on reflection, what we've seen over the last 15 years that defies logic when we talk about good governance and good strategic long-term policy. The system of what we've got at the moment is broken. It could work when we were going through the biggest economic boom, but we're now going to have to change course into much more choppier seas, and we're going to have to start creating the good governance that the people need and the strategic long-term thinking more than what the individual few's ideas as far as their next election is concerned. Okay, well I'll reset the camera again.
Is that enough for you?
No, I'd like a bit more. Okay. Okay, so just to finish off then, I mean, we're focusing on your sort of core really of good governance and scrutiny, and I'm really interested in how to sort of so there's a couple of questions just on the off. Do you think there is any mileage in people coming together?
Absolutely. What you've got to do is
you wouldn't be opposed in principle to Lib Van and the Manx Labour Party and whoever else developing this programme for government idea, to try and see if there's a way to get what you want, basically, to get a sort of an agreement in place.
I think the point is, what you've got to do is you've got to create the strategic policy. In a party political system, the parties develop the systems of long-term strategic policies. The problem you've got at the moment is you look at the work that what work we've got, the stuff we've got to read as far as these Tynwald agendas is concerned. See, if you're in a party, you would specialise maybe in housing and in sort. I would specialise in law and order, and someone else would, and you'd work together and you'd foment strategic policies. The problem you've got at the moment is that basically that function's not being done outside of very few selected friends, 2 or 3 ministers, and that has to change.
In an ideal world, obviously, Lib Van gets seats everywhere. In reality, there's got to be some mileage in working out some agreements between these, parties.
But the problem, what we mustn't do, is create this situation where you end up what you've got now, where, as the old Manxies used to say, they were yam-yats. They're independents. They're Tory to you, Liberal to me, Labour, and all things to all people end up being nothing to anybody.
That's why there's got to be some sort of commitment beforehand, isn't there? I mean, if Lib Van and the Manx Labour Party took the lead on this and sort of said, well, we can work together in certain areas in order to ensure, because let's just say that, a Manx Labour Party person is elected in one place and a Lib Van person is elected in another place. That means that, in theory, you've then got 2 oppositions, but actually there's not much between them. And if they had an agreement before,
but you more likely wouldn't have 2 oppositions, because the Labour Party's always stayed part of the pot. When I left the Labour Party, as I say, we the situation has got to change, and the problem you've got to have is you've got to bring about the sort of changes that need to come about. The problem is that you can't have a situation where you've got the likes of a public accounts committee where you actually work harder than 95% of the government departments do. It's less. It's not the thing you're going to get your trips on or anything else. You're not going to get your enhancement of money. It needs to be valued on the same basis. The thing where the party comes in is you need to be developing strategic policies. Time and time again we've asked them to look at things, and because we're not part of the cosy arrangement, that it's just thrown out without any thought. This issue about banking has to be addressed. If we are to stay an international finance sector in an honest party system, then there would be a recognition that that was coming from the opposition, and that would be resourced properly. At the moment, what you've got is a situation where basically you're on your own, and you have a situation where what we've got to try and get out, as far as the future is concerned, is how we develop the strategies and the policy development so that we can actually have the freedom to flourish for the future of the Isle of Man, to provide the fantastic social improvements that we've had over the last 30 years, because I see them under threat.
Okay, well, let me finish on my own personal peccadillo then. You heard me speak at the Lib Van AGM in February on direct democracy, and I still feel that has potential for you. That idea has potential to give you what you've needed, what you've wanted for all this time. Because, let's say that Lib Van get 4 or 5 candidates elected. That's still not enough, really.
But to believe it or not, James, 3 or 4 together, working together, there is such a deficit, void of strategic long-term policy. It's not... I'm not Mystic Meg. The situation is you ask people who, and you pick other people's brains. I didn't see the issue on my own about the MEA or the likes of the steam packet, which we now see this crazy situation where they're wanting to repeat the mistake of history.
Yeah, but that's my point, is that if you had a system of direct democracy, you'd be able to flag that up and get everybody else.
I don't think many people realise you've got the wife to look after, the kids to look after, and you're not really that much interest. What you need to do is get the ones who are more engaged to help develop the policies. The likes of this thing with the steam packet, they know the answer to the steam packet. What we should do is we should develop the policy of a new company with 2 sets of shares, one that deals with the operation and the other that deals with the financing, and make sure that we restrict the ownership of them shares to people who are domiciled on the island, and there's nobody can own more than maybe 0.5% of the controlling interest of the new shipping line, and that's the way forward. But them things will be withered on the vine, because at the moment they've not got the ear of the lucky few that makes the policy for the rest of them to nod through.
Well, in essence, though, the main problem is you just put, highlighted a few seconds ago, is not the people who are engaged, it's the people who aren't engaged. That's kind of what I'm interested in.
I know, and I was talking to somebody tonight who was thinking they were smart by saying, "Oh, well, I never vote." I said, "Well, you're an idiot."
Well, that's it.
You're an idiot. They are spending your money, and what concerns me is that, in my opinion, there is an element that have been able to use the public purse as their own personal piggy bank for far too long. And the only way you're going to sort that out is people getting engaged and realising that people fought and died for the working people.
See, this is going back to the very where you started. Really, this is my fear: is that you're aware that those people will likely only become engaged when it gets really, when
sadly,
they get beaten on the ass.
I think sadly that's more likely the case.
Yeah.
And the problem is it'll be much more harder to dig people out of a hole.
Oh yeah, once you're down, you're down, aren't you?
And of course, the point is, I've always said about the Isle of Man, the greatest asset of the Isle of Man is not gold or diamonds, it's the time element. What happens here tomorrow has happened a decade or so in Britain. I can't feed the starving throughout the world. We can't liberate Tibet for the Dalai Lama. But what we can do is show them how a microstate can operate. And the point was that we had a tremendous leg up, which in my opinion, the Brown and the Bell administration have blown it because of the bad governance that has been allowed to happen. And I only hope that people will then start thinking like, so the Liberal Party has its meetings the second Wednesday of the month at South Douglas Old Friends at 8 o'clock, and I hope people start getting involved.
Well, yeah, hopefully it doesn't have to get too painful before people will get involved.
Well, I hope so. I hope that I'm wrong, because as I say, I hope that there is no suffering, because that's not what I went into politics for. I went into politics to develop a new Jerusalem, not a matter of three development.
Thank you very much. We'll see you again soon. Cheers.
You better not use that last bit.